Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tuesday, October 15th version of Spring City Council meeting. Welcome, everyone. This evening's invocation, do I see the bishop out here?
Yes.
Come forward, sir, if you would, please. And let's start this meeting with prayer to the Lord. Bishop Taylor from the Faith and Family Life Worship Center.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Let us pray. Father God, we give you thanks for this day. We thank you for the rising of the sun this morning. You kept us all day. And here we are, coming to another time when we are assembled together to conduct a meeting for this city, for this county, for the things for your people. And I pray, Father, that each person that represents this government, Lord God, that you lead and guide them, Father, and that you have breathed on them. And Father, we know that even though they have been appointed, but we know that the government's on your shoulder. So we know that, pray that they will seek you for direction and instructions for your people. We pray tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Mayor.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bishop Taylor, and thank you, Mayor, for a great selection.
I want to thank Bishop Taylor for doing a
invitation.
professional job.
A real professional job.
And I think he even cared about y'all.
Actually, a direct line.
I had to be careful. My wife told me, just pray, don't talk.
They're gonna cut your pay though.
I was going to say, I'm going to have to give you half my pay now.
Very good. Kathy, let's call the roll.
Mayor Shoup,
Here.
Carlo,
Here.
Ivy,
Here.
Lawrence,
Here.
Stewart,
Here.
Detman.
Here. I need to announce that any business from the audience, if you have anything that is not on tonight's agenda, but you'd like to bring it forward for our consideration tonight, please see Clerk Haley, and she'll give you a little slip of paper, and we'll get you before us a little bit later in the agenda. Mayor's report. You got a good one, sir.
You got a good one. Just a couple things before the proclamation, but the circle, I don't know if y'all have seen the pink lights on the circle.
Beautiful.
They are
Yeah.
really, it's kind
Really
of a
neat.
classy looking thing. I think that's really good at what Naughty Girl and Diana Albritton's done with the CRA, but also from what the CRA's done, and we're going to hear more about that in the future of this meeting, but the cinema on the circle this weekend, I wasn't there unfortunately, but I got a bunch of pictures from it, and that place was packed. There was people all over that place, so it was really cool. And we've got a couple other events coming up on Friday. The Downtown Sounds, I think is what you call it. But I'll let Christy kind of bring us up to date, but thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it. We do have a proclamation for the Rotary. Do you want to meet me at the podium, Scott, or should we just do it here?
You can do that.
Okay. This is for all you Rotarians. Any Rotarians in the house?
Yep.
You a Rotarian? A dues paying member?
Yes.
Chris doesn't
Congratulations.
show up for the meeting.
All right, the
I do
proclamation.
sometimes.
Whereas Rotary is a global network of 1.2 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who will unite and take action to create lasting change in communities across the globe. And whereas the Rotary motto, service above self, inspires members to provide humanitarian service, follow high ethical standards, and promote goodwill and peace in the world. Whereas Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus, and in 1988 helped establish a global polio eradication initiative, which today includes the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, UNICEF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to immunize the children of the world against polio. Whereas polio cases have dropped 99.9% since 1988, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease. Whereas to date, Rotary has contributed more than $1.9 billion in countless volunteer hours to protect more than 2.5 billion children in 122 countries. And whereas Rotary is working to raise an additional $50 million per year, which would be leveraged for maximum impact by an additional $100 million annually from Chief Detman. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
From Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Whereas these efforts are providing much-needed operational support, medical staff, laboratory equipment, and educational materials for health workers and parents. And whereas, in addition, Rotary has played a major role in decisions by donor governments to contribute more than $8 billion to the effort. And whereas there are 100 Rotary members and three clubs within the city of Sebring that sponsor service projects to address such critical issues as poverty, disease, hunger, illiteracy, and the environment in which their local communities and abroad. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, John Shute, Mayor of the City of Sebring, Florida, do hereby proclaim that October 24th, 2019, as World Polio Day in the City of Sebring, encourage all citizens to join me and Rotary International in a fight for a polio-free world. So Scott, I will pass this off to you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Very nice.
That is all I have.
Good job, sir. Council members, concerns, comments, liaison reports. We'll start on my left all the way down to the end. Charlie, go right ahead.
Nothing from me, sir.
Stuart?
No, sir.
Leonard?
The mayor forgot to mention Circle of Truth that was downtown. They had a big crowd too.
Thanks to Dee.
Yeah, amen.
And Mr. Ivy?
Nothing.
Well, I'd like to report that we're gonna have some new neighbors over off of Scenic Highway and the Parkway. At this morning's county commission meeting, by a vote of 4-1, Bernie Little Distributors did receive the rezoning and comp plan amendment that they had requested. So therefore, we can look forward to a water service agreement, annexation, and who knows down the road. We have a consent agenda with items A through J.
I make a motion we accept the consent agenda as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on all of those consent agenda items. For the folks out there, does anyone there have any questions or comments that they would like to make regarding these agenda items? Sounds automatic. Kathy, call the roll.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Can I
Item
make a
9.
comment on that?
Yes, please.
Part of the consent agenda is from Bishop Taylor. His Palm Sunday, April 5th, 2020, from 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. will be on the circle. So thank you for doing that, Reverend Taylor. And thank you for praying for us tonight. So.
Thank you. Being that there is no old business, item 10 is new business. We have 5 agenda items there, all of which, well, let's do the 2019 Christmas Parade. Ian Bellinger? Come on down.
All right. Good evening. I'm Ian Bellinger with the Avon Park Sebring JCs, and once again we'll be hosting and organizing and coordinating the downtown Sebring Christmas Parade. I believe, Ms. Haley, did you provide the packet to everybody with all the requested road closures and other items that they may need?
Yes, I did.
Perfect. Okay. So basically today, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time at the Christmas Parade. No changes this year as far as what we're asking of you guys. Couple of road closures. We're going to follow the same path, lining up on the Parkway early and then coming down through the circle and kind of ending down by the fairgrounds. So like I said, there is a couple of road closures that I believe you guys will have to approve to make that happen. And we really appreciate your support in making that happen each year for us. Guys have any questions, comments, concerns?
Comments, questions? Gentlemen?
I'd just like to say, I think it's a great thing. We have a tremendous turnout for it.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
so cool.
And
Yeah,
it really
you've
gets
done a
people
really
into the
good job,
spirit,
too.
so I'm just so happy that you do it.
Thank you.
Any comments from the audience?
I think you had more.
Sure, it's Friday. It is on Friday, December the 6th, and it will start at about 7 o'clock. And then the lineup starts at about 5:30.
I think we had more people this past year than we've had in
It was a very large
Yeah.
crowd
the
last
crowd.
year.
It was.
We'll put out chairs about noon.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure did.
Or the day before. I'll make a motion we approve the event as presented.
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any other comments from the audience? Kathy, please call.
Carla,
Yes.
Ivy,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Now it's the Christy Vasquez show.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate what you do, Ian.
Thank you, sir, and great job always. You've got the next 4 agenda items, so rip right on through them.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, Council. I'm Christy Vasquez, the Executive Director of our Downtown Sebring CRA, and you will see on the Christy Show of your agenda. The next 4 items are 4 events that the CRA is working on throughout this next fiscal year. As Mayor Shoup alluded, the first one on your agenda is Cinema on the Circle. We started with this last fiscal year. We've seen a great turnout for it. We do it on the second Friday of the month. We try to keep it a standard day and time. We try to incorporate some additional activities along with each movie, but it's something the CRA puts on for free for the community. It's our family-friendly fun night, but this year what we're going to include as well, we only did it last year from about April, and then we started back up again in October. So we ran October, then back through April. We just found summer wasn't necessarily the best time to sit outside or have outdoor movie equipment up. But what we are going to do this year, because we can definitely tell that the influx of traffic is needed just as much, if not more, in the summer than just throughout the season. So we're gonna run that all year long and go from October through September and try to keep that pattern going. We are partnering with the Circle Theater. That way, during the times when it is inclement weather, we could utilize the Circle Theater on those dates in the summer. And then that way we can still draw a crowd. We're still bringing traffic to downtown, but we're doing it in a better way, and we don't have the liability with all of our equipment hanging outside. So that's the first item that you see on your agenda. Can I answer any questions on that?
Go right ahead.
Okay, I'll keep going. All right. The next event is Downtown Sounds. So as we were putting
wait a minute,
together,
are we gonna take a vote?
oh, sorry, you have to.
You want to vote on all of these
Yes.
individually?
Yes, because they're individual.
We could do them as a whole slate of 4, and then we could save your voice. So if no one else objects to that.
You don't like my voice? Okay.
She was over here growling.
No, I just have my little packet, and so, but I can readjust.
You guys all right with that?
I'm good. I'm readjusting.
Please.
Okay. To add on to our events for the coming year, Downtown Sounds was something that we created to have a night of live entertainment on the Circle. So again, utilizing Circle Park and featuring local bands in the area. But that way we could try to have something every weekend within the month. We generally see that the first weekend of the month we have a lot of other event organizers that are handling their events then. So then the second, third, and fourth weeks of the month we generally see a little bit less going on. So for us to try and integrate something that would still bring families downtown, we could do it for free. But it would also be the most convenient for our merchants as well, to where we're closing, no roads, no parking restrictions. So we tried to keep all of that in mind as well. That way we were actually helping with traffic. So Downtown Sounds is the second thing that you will see, and that is on the third Friday of the month. We're going to try Friday and see how that goes. We have had some requests to potentially look at Saturday as well, but we tried to get a mix of 2 Fridays and 2 Saturdays. That way if you couldn't make one, you can make the other. Okay? So that is the next one.
Please.
Crunch and Brunch is our downtown fitness series. So this will be on the 4th Saturday of the month. It'll start at 10 a.m. It'll be an hour long, and then that way we can kind of highlight our eateries that are in downtown, the play on the brunch part to where you work out, and then you can go and hopefully patron one of our establishments that would be open for brunch during that time. Again, it will be free to the public, varying degrees of anything from yoga to body weight to cardiovascular. We try to mix it up as much as we can. We're almost completely full as far as instructors for that as well. I know Downtown Sounds, we just booked our very last date available, so we're completely booked for the foreseeable future as well. So that was our addition there. Any questions on that one? No? Okay. Small Business Saturday. Last year, Dan Andrews was instrumental in getting this going. I was out on maternity leave at that point in time, so he took over And that's kind of our kickoff in downtown as well as across the country. American Express sponsors Small Business Saturday, Shop Small Saturday, and it's supposed to be the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and it's supposed to draw homage to our small businesses that are in your community and really try to push traffic towards not just shopping at your big box retailers, but also patroning those small businesses that are in your community. So obviously our downtown circle is full of those, so we would like to pick that back up again this year, the CRA working hand in hand with Dan and our merchants to have a passport program where from 12 to 8 p.m. you have the ability to shop the specials that are in our downtown merchants. We'll have a window decorating contest, 12 to 8 p.m. The reason why we did that rather than, say 8 o'clock in the morning, it's really easy to get up in the morning for the most part on the weekend and go shopping, but we really wanted to try and lengthen that day a little bit more. So we figured if we could give it a shot and see if we started at noon and try to inject some additional sales that are going on and really draw attention to what we have downtown, that hopefully we've made that entire day a fair. We are inviting pop-up shops that don't compete with our merchants to try and fill in some of the spaces on the sidewalks where we do have some vacant spaces, kind of take away from that, but then also offer some additional vendors some opportunities there. We're not necessarily charging for anybody, but we are asking if they are a pop-up shop that they provide a raffle prize, and then for as many of those as we have, we will raffle those off throughout the afternoon to kind of keep things going. The merchants who are participating that are actual brick and mortar merchants are asked to donate $50 towards the pot. And then the passports, as you go around and visit all of the participating merchants, you bring that back to us, and then we'll do a drawing at the end of the night about 7 o'clock. That way we get people to stay as long as we can. And then we will go and purchase with the money from the merchants a gift certificate back to their participating downtown merchant of their choice. That way we keep those dollars downtown. At about 7 o'clock after that takes place, we're working with John Spiegel and with the mayor to do a lighting ceremony of the circle. The timing worked out perfectly this year where Small Business Saturday and the first day of our Christmas Carousel of Lights will be taking place. So there's not necessarily one button that turns all the lights on at one time, but we can do the tree and then everything else can go from there. So it'll help us lengthen that out a little bit more, but then that way we can hopefully each year tie those two together to where it's the culmination of the start of the holiday season in downtown Sebring.
Very nice. Any questions on that particular item? Any comments from the audience on all four of the items? We'll entertain a motion to approve under 10, A, B, C, D, and E.
I would like to make a motion that we approve all of the events as presented, conditioned upon providing liability insurance.
I'll second that. And thank you very much for working so hard. You're doing a great job.
Thank you very
You are doing a
much
great
for
job.
having a blast. I appreciate your support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Kathy, please call the roll.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Thank you, council.
Thank
you.
you. Any business from the audience, Ms. Haley?
Yes, sir.
None. City Attorney's business, sir.
On the order of less exciting is the proposed ordinance amending section 26-181 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Sebring by providing criteria for sidewalk cafe permit renewals, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date. The purpose of the proposed ordinance amendment is to make it easier for subsequent year renewals and make life a little easier on those businesses, the restaurants that have them.
Very good. Do we have to do a reading or anything on this?
We have done it. Happy
That
to
is
answer
it.
any questions?
That's it. Any questions from the dais? Any questions or comments from the audience?
I make a motion, we approve the ordinance on first reading and schedule second and final reading for November the 5th, 2019.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Kathy, it's your show.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. I think the person with the very first sidewalk permit in either 1998, late or early 1999 is in the audience. Her name is Mrs. Detman. And that was for Downtown Donuts back in the day
Yeah.
when I was the only police chief in America to own his own donut shop. So Debbie, Congratulations on that legacy, if you will. Oh, boy. City administrator business. Time to chime in, Mr. Nalek. It's your turn.
As council may recall, agenda item 13A, we issued an RFQ for engineering firms to address the issues on Lakeview Drive on the west side of the lake. We had 4 responses to that RFQ. Chastain Skillman, Civil Serve, Craig A. Smith, and Pannoni and Associates. Last Friday, we had a committee meeting, and the attached sheet will reflect the evaluations and scores for each of those firms. Staff is asking council to recommend that the city council accept that printout and direct staff to negotiate a contract with the top-ranked firm. The top-ranked firm was Civil Serve.
Any questions or comments regarding this agenda item? Comments from the audience? We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the ranking of the RFQ committee as shown in the attached printout and direct the staff to negotiate a contract beginning with the top-ranked firm, which will be Civil Serve.
Second.
We have a second. Mr. Carlisle. Kathy?
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Item 13B, again, Mr. Nalek.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We will do a good job for you.
Yes, sir, I know you will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bree.
Agenda item 13B is a proposed purchase of the old Bank of America parking lot and teller parcel. As you all know, this parking lot is located very close to City Pier Beach, Jack Stroop Civic Center, the Highlands Art League properties, and Highlands Little Theater. And staff believes this is a strategic acquisition for the future of Sebring. It's been offered to the city for a $200,000 price tag. Councilman Lawrence has an ownership interest in this property, and as such, he has a conflict and will not be voting on this. If you'll take a look at the attached layouts, I've had Polson Engineering kind of draw up a potential parking plan, and there are 2 there. They each provide about 140 spaces. And the purpose of this is just to give you an idea of how many spaces that we would be looking at if council were to proceed forth with this. We would ask that you instruct us to go out and get an appraisal of the property. And we will also reach out to the Florida Commission on Ethics in reference to Charlie's conflict, if you will.
Do we have any
Questions?
idea, I'm sorry, do we have any ideas or estimates on the demolition of the actual teller, the teller drive-through?
Over a year ago, we got a rough number,
The guy that was
Just
walking
quoted?
down the street with the hammer,
and it was about, I'm going to say in the neighborhood of 180 to do the demo of the teller and to do the landscaping in the parking lot. So, but, obviously that's one of those things that, we'll want to go out and do.
yeah. Okay, I'm not sure I
But it was
understood that.
enough.
If they're offering us this property for $200,000,
Mhm.
and then we're responsible for the demolition of the building there and obviously the improvements.
Yes.
So
Now, I
this is
did have a
potentially a
conversation,
$400,000
with CRA staff. Did have a conversation with CRA staff about making the improvements. They have not presented that to their board yet, but it looks as if they may recommend that to their board.
So this could have potential to be a $400,000 project then,
Yes, sir.
or more.
Well, part of this motion is to request an appraisal.
Yes,
Let's see what it's worth,
sure.
so.
Yep. Just trying to get a good idea for ourselves and the audience.
And then, we've kicked around some ideas, you could do this in phases too. You wouldn't have to do it all at once if you didn't elect to do so. So you could do part of that parking lot if you wanted to, and then somewhere in the future, somewhere down the line, you could do the other half of the parking lot.
Well, it can be used like it is for a while, can it, or not?
It could be used as it is right now. We definitely would want to dress it up a bit.
Take the gates down.
Christie could have a special event or
Chicken.
a demo.
Let me interject here real
demo
quick
the
and
drive-ins,
confirm
you know.
what Scott is saying, that I am not going to participate in the conversation here at all, and I will abstain from the vote, because I do have personal interest in it.
Okay.
Well, I make a motion to instruct the city staff to obtain an appraisal on the property and instruct the city attorney to draft a contract for the purchase and seek an opinion from the Office of the Florida Commission of Ethics.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I guess my only question is, why do you want to seek the opinion from the office of the, he's not going to be voting on it.
Abstention from voting would not cure the conflict.
I see. Okay. Okay, that's fair enough. Comments from the audience on this issue, please. Come forward, sir. State your name and address.
My name is Mike Telshow. Some of you know me and some of you don't. I'm probably the person that's most affected by this sale and purchase. I own the building across the street, former flea market, and now the downtown mall. And I am 100% in favor of adding parking to the downtown area. Without question, that's been the biggest problem for a long, long time. I caution you to go carefully with this project. There are hidden costs everywhere. The minute you start redesigning and re-engineering this, you're subject to drainage revisions, loss of parking spaces, and other costs that are unforeseen. The demolition of the building alone adds tremendous cost to what should be a acquisition of parking spaces that should stay under the $2,000, $2,200 range, from my experience. So when you get to $3,000 or $4,000, you're doing the residents of Sebring a disfavor by adding costs to the budget that shouldn't be there, and it's your job to protect them for. I had an option on this property for 2 years. When I bought the when I bought the building, Charlie and I negotiated an option for $200,000 for this property, and it was my intention at the time to incorporate it into my development plans there. So I paid a lot of attention to what was going on. I know the property intimately. The paving in the parking lot that exists there now is worthless. It'll have to be taken up. So the paving costs are a major consideration, as well as the demolition costs and other costs of redesign, engineering, and permitting of new drainage structures. About 6 months ago, I had suggested to Scott and John, who visited my place, that I was in possession of this option and was considering the best uses for the property. At the time, I told them that I thought the parking areas that existed with egress and ingress could easily be paved over and be acquired for a reasonable cost per unit, and that I was perfectly comfortable with remodeling the old drive-through structure. My plans tentatively involved taking the roof off, putting a new roof line on it, extending the wings, and making it a potential restaurant site for the downtown area that had good parking, that you didn't have to walk 2 blocks through an alley or the back 40. And if anybody wants to know what the real problem with coming downtown to Sebring is, most of the people that enjoy it are people that are senior citizens. And most senior citizens won't stay down here past sunset. The idea of walking just down a side street to get to a parking space is scary. And so all of these problems have been in the way of progress for the downtown area. This, I think, is a good idea. I think that it's very, very important to go slow on this project, and I would like to make a couple suggestions and leave it there and offer anybody here on the council to come visit me at the mall and discuss it further. The existing 2 drive-throughs on the south end and the north end of the existing parcel would require almost nothing to improve. Just a matter of paving, leaving the curbs in place, and maybe developing an exit entrance strategy that would benefit the flow of traffic that comes through. With that, you would have about 80 new spaces under the threshold of $2,500 per space. That being said, that in most events, people coming downtown who couldn't find space might park their cars 2.5 blocks away from the downtown area and walk up. But chances are more likely that they'll try and sneak into my parking lot, and with maybe the ruse of shopping in my place, they might come through and they might not. In the first 2 years I've been there, I've had a dozen very bad experiences. Both bicycle events were tragedies with lots of really unhappy people. The helter-skelter approach to parking was never taken into consideration by the organizers and ignored. And as a result, I had to have men, 4, 5, 6 men, and Charlie did too for the year or two that he had it before, down there directing traffic at our expense. In order to offset that cost, we had to charge a nominal fee for parking, to which everybody grumbled and griped. And the promoter, Mr. Bicycle Guy, nearly got in a fight with me over my right to charge for parking. He instructed people to drive 3 blocks away. And those people, as they crossed our property, knowing that there were empty parking spaces there, were very upset and more than willing to pay $5 or $10 for parking. Now, the reason I brought this up is because every single event downtown affects me. I'm one of the only property owners downtown that has my own parking lot. Most everybody else has a shop and a couple parking spaces in front and maybe a parking lot behind the building. So every time there's an event downtown, nobody cares that I've got to put 3, 4, 5 people out front directing traffic. And here's what happens. A guy comes in with his 2 little girls and his wife. They park right in front of my front door. My guy says, "I'm sorry, you can't park here unless you're a customer." This is what we get. Not only do we get this, but we also get the gossip after the fact that it goes to the neighborhood and all the other people who might become customers, who now hear the fact that we're really bad guys because we want to protect the 60 or 80 Saturday visitors that are coming to our parking lot so they can shop and have a parking place there and not have to walk blocks away. So you may think that this is a good idea for me, and originally I was 100% for it. Now I'm only 75% for it. And a better solution, and I'm always a person who, when I see a problem, like to create solutions. A better solution, in my estimate, knowing the property well, is that if you decide to proceed with this purchase, that you strongly consider paving the existing parking lots that are there as is, so you avoid additional costs. You have 80 good spots there. Then consider whether or not demolishing that building is practical. As an adjunct to this, I would be more than happy to offer my 40 parking slots behind the building to the city as a part of this consideration, with this advantage to everybody. I don't have to go out there and police it and make enemies. 2, the people who are going downtown will be closer than they would across the street. It would tie together with the northernmost parcels that are there and my parcel, and I think I kind of had suggested that to John and Scott at one time, that those 2 parking lots and my parking lot combined through the alleyway, which separates our downtown properties there. There's an alleyway that goes directly to the could be created or modified into a nice park walkway for people who have to park farther away, who might be a little hesitant about walking between buildings to get to the other services. So I don't want to get into a nose-to-nose conflict every time there's an event downtown, and I hope that you all will seriously consider these ideas as a part of your overall plan. And I'll be available anytime at the downtown mall. We're open Wednesday through Saturday from 10 to 5, and we have a brand new deli that serves the best homemade soups in town. So thank you very much.
Any other comments from the audience? Okay, I think we had a motion and a second. No?
Yes, we did.
I think we did.
Yes, you do.
So, any other information, amendments, additions, deletions on the motion? Okay, Kathy, call the roll.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Abstain.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Telshow, for your information. It was valuable.
Appreciate that, sir. Thank you. And it looks like, second to the last item is the old Wachovia building, item 13C. Once again, Mr. Nathan.
At your September 17th meeting, staff was instructed to go and hire an architect to produce a full set of plans that could be bid upon. In that process, it was determined that we would have to go out to the RFQ process to hire an architect. And that would take us down the same engineering process, if you will, where we've got to put out an RFQ to get obtain an architect, have the architect, then rank those architects, ultimately come back to council, get approval to negotiate with an architect, and then have the architect do the plans, and then ultimately put those back out to bid. So in discussion with Mr. Swain, who's got familiarity with a design build process that the airport uses from time to time, it seemed as if that might be a better process for this for a couple reasons. One, it kind of shortcuts that process. Number two, I'm not sure that this structure really needs a full-blown architect to do everything that's on the interior. So our thought process is perhaps we negotiate, do the design build process, negotiate with the contractor, and then ultimately if a contractor has to hire an architect to deal with a particular issue, maybe potentially an elevator issue or something of that nature, then he could do that. With that, I want to turn it over to Bob because he's a little more familiar with it, and he's recommended maybe some phases with which that design build process would work.
Okay.
So, yes, sir. As you'll see in the last paragraph of the agenda item summary, what you could do is have a design builder. That's the one entity you'll contract with. And what makes this difference is you don't yet know if you want to spend the money. You don't know what it would cost, so you don't know if you want to spend it. You don't know if you want to move City Hall. If you knew you wanted to move City Hall, that'd be a different, we could proceed in a different manner. This, I think, gives you a way of finding out what the cost is, or at least a more comfortable estimate of what the cost is. And you can have differing stop points during your contract with the provider that gives you a rough estimate, say 75% confidence, then perhaps a more refined estimate at 90% confident, or some other percentage estimate that you would think, okay, we either can't do this, the price is going to be way too much, or we think it's worth, it looks good, we want a little more comfort level before we go to contract. And the benefit of the design build, it's not an estimate by somebody who isn't in the, it's not an estimate by a knowledgeable person, it's the entity you would be contracting with to actually do the work. And the only way you would have picked them was you ranked them through this RFQ process as being very qualified, very highly qualified. So this is somebody you'd be comfortable having doing the work for you. So you've got to go through an RFQ process one way or another because of the scope of this project. The question is, do you want to hire a design person to full design the plans at an amount, get bid numbers and go, woof, we can't do that, or perhaps go this second route where I think you will spend less money to find out the threshold question of whether you want to spend the money necessary to renovate the building and move City Hall.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Stewart first.
Well, it sounds logical to me. We're not designing a building that requires a foundation and structural supporting issues, with the exception of maybe some things we're talking about, but it already has that. And I feel like this would be a very reasonable way to get a better idea of how much it's going to cost without spending a huge amount of money. So I like the two phases as well. You still have to put out an RFQ for this design build company.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially they would be bidding and designing on their own nickel to begin with. and obviously we like that part. So I think it's a good idea.
By the way, just for the audience, the reason I asked Mr. Stewart first is because he is a licensed contractor here in the state of Florida. He's got a ton of experience. We kind of rely on a little bit of his expertise and his guidance in these areas. That doesn't mean that the rest of you should chime in. Please do. Charlie.
I just have a question in regards to that, and it's just for my understanding, I guess, but the first phase, for instance, he would charge, let's just say 5 or 10% of the total project and then go on from there, but he would, in his RFQ, he would say, I'm gonna charge X number of dollars for phase 1, X number of dollars for phase 2, and then that would go out to, we would have other bids for it in those phases, or?
No, sir, you would, through an RFQ, you pick somebody like we have Civil Serve, just based on qualifications. Price doesn't enter into the analysis, and that's by statute. Once you pick that person, you would negotiate a contract that had those phases where you would have set dollar amounts for them to do the investigation to know what needed to be done and give you some plus or minus number that gave you fair confidence that you were in the ballpark of what it would cost to renovate, and that you would not then take that number out and bid it amongst others. That would be what your top ranked design builder proposed in your contract.
So that phase 1 basically would not be bid then?
Correct.
We would only bid on the qualifications of, the best qualifications of whoever submitted those.
You'd be choosing a contractor,
Yeah.
basically.
Right. And you
Without-
have control over what that first number, what the city would spend to get that level of comfort. And through negotiation with them, you could agree on a set dollar amount that you would pay for them and what you would get back from them on it. So you don't have to say, go and do and tell us how much it costs at the end of the day. You'd have those stopping points for cost control.
So you're gonna pay them to give you that first number that's within 20 to 30% of what the total cost might be. If that number scares you,
Right.
you'll
We
walk
can
away.
bail.
If that number doesn't scare you, then phase 2 could be, they can give you a number within 5%, if you even need that. I mean, that's obviously y'all's choice.
What if that first number does scare us? They come back and say, we want $100,000, I'm just throwing the number out, $100,000 to give you that first estimate. We say, that seems like too much. Can we then bid it out just that phase?
We can say no.
What you'd next do, of course you can say no. What you would then do is move on to your second most highly ranked design build responder. So in this case, you had 4 engineers for the Lakeview project. You would likely have multiple responders. Can't cut a deal with number 1, you move down and negotiate with number 2.
Okay. So we do have the option of saying no when he comes back and says
Correct.
$700,000 for phase 1 or whatever. Okay. All right, thank you.
And what they could identify as the few or handful of areas that really would impact the cost, and maybe get input from the city on what you'd want to do with some of those items in that first phase, where you could sort of have a better feel for which direction you'd want to go and for the elevator, for instance, what you may want to do with that. That's a big potential dollar item that you could work on in that first phase.
I think it'd be substantially less than the $100,000 we were quoted. Without a doubt. So to me, it makes logical sense.
Any comments from this end of the dais? Chime in at all?
No, I think that I didn't understand this RFQ thing until we got into this engineering, because I said, well, if you're just doing on qualifications, what happens if the engineer comes in and you've got a $2 million project and he says, I want to bid, it's gonna be $10 million. Well, if you have a reasonable idea what that number is, you can say, well, we're gonna move to the next guy. So that kinda keeps the first guy honest if he wants to get the job, or a potential at the job. We're also, may put him in a worse position of being number 1, and you're not liking it, moving to number 2 and finding out number 2 is the same as number 1, but you can't go back to number 1 then, correct? In that
Correct. Can't
process.
go back up.
If you
Cannot go
negotiate
back.
to number 2, you can't go back up.
Correct, and this is, if you were just doing the building as a whole, which you can do, it might be a little bit different, but here you're really talking to them and saying, what do you need to do to be able to give us a number, and you can work with them a little bit on the scope. It's not a rigid scope, so, once you start talking about once you can look at what's in the scope, that obviously can have a big effect on the price. And they can, and for a lower price, they can give you a
Sure.
a little more variance in that initial number.
And unlike the Lakeview project, if you will, what we're negotiating with the engineer is for their services. Ultimately, they will bring back, a plan that will get bid out. And that would be the same if we went down the architect route, right? But this kind of shortcuts the architect route, plus I'm not sure that this project really needs a full-blown architect to do what we need in this building.
And you probably don't need a full set of plans if you elect not to move forward for cost or whatever other considerations you may have.
Gentlemen?
Do you have any idea, Scott, what an architect would charge to come up with a plan? Have you talked to anybody, any ballpark figure?
I mean, my ballpark figure, probably in the $50,000 range. But that's just kind of based upon some hearsay I've heard, but, until you go through that process, you don't really know. And some of them charge based upon what they perceive the entire construction project to cost. So let's say it's a percentage. So there may be the possibility that he says, well, I want 10% of whatever your total construction project might be. But, I don't think it's gonna be that, I wouldn't think it would be that high. But, there's a lump sum, there's always the lump sum option, but different architects operate differently. So.
Okay, thank you.
And one of the benefit of the design build process, if you get to the point where you agree on a number, they've got to give you a guaranteed maximum price with a guaranteed completion date, and of course that's subject to agreement, so that that there is an absolute ceiling, which on a renovation gives you some comfort. I know it elicits a little heartburn on the design builder's side, but that's one of the things the statute does require if you do a design build contract and go all the way through the end.
Does that eliminate the possibility of change orders?
No.
No, definitely not.
Because, that's, yeah, exactly.
But if the scope
That's like
doesn't
Christmas,
change,
it comes every year.
yeah, if the scope doesn't change, you can, as the owner, say, well, that was part of the scope, and this is the number. Now, they will have, through what we're talking about, these phases, they will have looked through and found all the points at which, and factored in to the budget, or to the number, all the things that could get out of hand on them, and they will have that into consideration.
And the RFQ will obviously tell us which of those design builders have the experience in those areas, have done a project of this size or larger, and give us a feeling of confidence in moving forward.
Done it recently, done it on budget, on time,
Exactly, yeah.
all those things.
Yeah, I liked that. I like it. Oops.
That sounds good.
Let's hear from the audience. Do you have any input, any questions, comments? Well, I guess we're gonna move forward. We're gonna need a motion in order to do that. Might you be able to frame a possible motion for one of our councilmen to move forward on? Would it be just to
Instruct
put
staff
on
to
a-
pursue the RFQ for design build services.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, and we've got a motion from Carlisle, a second from Ivy.
Instruct staff to pursue the RFQ process, and then I didn't get the rest of it,
For the design build services.
the design build service.
Scott, is there anything else you feel like we?
I have one other comment or question actually to Scott, and that is, one of the things we talked about gaining some money for this project was this building here and the county's interest. Are they still giving us indications that they're interested in this area? And if so, how can we move forward on that?
Well, I guess the question is whether or not we're gonna move forward on that property.
That's definitely the question.
That's the question. So,
My-
Chicken or the
I
egg?
put them on hold, letting them know that we're in the process of determining whether we're gonna move forward on that property. In the interim, I think that, you know, at least from the staff level, they're comfortable with, you know, the offer that ultimately their commission would have to approve, but,
Sure.
um,
Well, because what I'm trying to get at here is, do we have the money to go forward with that from this, or a substantial part of it from this property? Because, you know, before we go building something else, it's kind of like buying a new house. You kind of want to have your old house sold first, or at least a reasonable,
You wanna know
well,
where
I
the money
think,
would come from?
yes. Or at
They
least
gotta
a-
have
yeah, I
estimates.
mean,
They gotta have
ultimately,
estimates.
we're gonna
Yeah.
probably want to know, if, we're gonna get to a point where we're gonna have to negotiate, you know, a future date. But, you know, obviously that future date won't be until we've done all the construction work there, but, you know, we can project that date out.
But we're gonna be able to get
But
the
we'll be
design
able
build
to-
guy to give us that 30% oops number, basically. And at that time, make the decision to, we don't contract them at that time, I think, until the county says we're gonna buy the building. And then it'll
Right.
just be a time frame difference in there.
Yeah, because I would like to know that we've got
Oh, yeah.
again, a substantial part of that money coming from this building here and this property, because we really don't have the money in our budget
Right.
without that. You know, our budget's pretty tight.
That's true.
And it's getting tighter.
But the appraisal was 750 to $1 million, right?
But having said that, I mean, the money is, they're not gonna tender the money up front, I don't think. So, you know, your money's gonna come from fund balance. You'll just need an agreement in place that they're gonna purchase this property.
Well, coming
So-
back to fund balance, you know, spending it out of fund balance is okay as long as it's gonna come back to fund
Correct.
balance.
Correct.
So,
That's-
you know, I'm not worried about a 6-month deal here or a 1-year deal, as long as, again, we're just not depleting fund balance. Okay, thank you.
Or we can just have the mayor just write us a check and go ahead and start moving forward.
I thought about having.
Okay,
Annie
Captain,
write
we
one.
have a motion and we have a second. We had no questions, comments. Let's call the roll.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Speaking of money, we need to pay the bills. That's
Yes,
item
we do.
14A, and the final is item agenda.
So
Agenda.
moved, so moved, so moved.
We got a so moved.
Second.
Second. All right, we got
Second.
a second, Kathy.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Ivy.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Anything else, folks? Thank you all for being here tonight.